Now, let me reference this great theological source. It's called CNN. CNN.
The Clinton News Network, okay.
CNN says right now for Muslims around the world, Eid al-Adha. Eid, A-L-Al-Ad, A-D-H-A, Eid al-Adha, is a time of celebration marked by visits from far-flung relatives, gift-giving, and elaborate feasts. But this year, the joyous occasion on Tuesday was marred by bomb blasts and deaths in Afghanistan, Iraq, and civil war-racked Syria.
You're not supposed to...
Now let's go into the explanation of the reverence for Eid al-Adha.
Good picture.
This is according to the theological source.
Look at that.
Now, for those of you not driving in your car, you see a beautiful picture of the Muslims. They got to walk 7 times around the Kaaba, and then they go out in the outside area, outside of here, pick up little white stones, throw them at the figurative Satan, and it was a whole series of 4 days of celebration. CNN details the celebration for us, and we're going to relay this to our trip where we just got back. Eid al-Adha is considered one of Islam's most revered observances. It corresponds with the height of the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca in Saudi Arabia, that annually draws 2 million people, but this year less because of the concern about a virus. Eid al-Adha commemorates when God appeared to Abraham. Follow this now, kiddies, known as Ibrahim to Muslims, not
Ibrahim,
in a dream, and asked him to sacrifice his son as an act of obedience.
Where'd they get that from?
Abraham was about to perform the sacrifice. God stopped him and gave him a sheep to kill in place of his son. Okay, so cool so far?
So far, so good.
Okay.
Next sentence. A version of the story also appears in the Torah.
A version of
it? Also.
Oh my God! The Jews got a time capsule. Fast forwarded to 720. Read the Koran, got back in the time machine, went back a few thousand years, and wrote the Bible.
Wait, yeah.
Now this is CNN, the great theological depository of information. Now I happen to have a Bible right here on my pink phone. Okay, I'm going to where they said the Bible also has a version of the story.
But that's not really important.
Okay. Now, this is very important. This is why we fight.
Right.
So Genesis chapter 22, for you bibliophiles. Genesis chapter 22, verse 1. Now, it came about after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, what's wrong with God? The guy's name is Ibrahim, not Abraham. God said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. God said, take now your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac. God speaking.
Yeah.
Take now your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I tell you. Where is that mountain, Mark?
Right there.
Under this thing right now. All right. Now everybody just heard CNN said
this show should be
a version of the holiday right now. One of the most important holidays in the Muslim world, 1.3 billion people. Now, this is particularly, right now, this conversation is to all the relativistic people out there where truth is irrelevant. There's no fundamental anchoring to any unchanging principles, just whatever anybody believes. And if the Muslims believe the way they do, that's true. If the Jews and Christians believe they whatever, everybody, all the roads lead to the same. Well, we're going to see if we have a specific and obvious contradiction here between these three religions, Christianity, Judaism on one side, and Islam on the other. According to CNN, all the people right now that you see on your screen at the Hajj doing something they have to do in order to make it into paradise. The story in the Bible references the son of Abraham as whom, CJ?
As Isaac.
Okay. the story in the Quran? Who is referenced there? Who
Call
the
me
Muslim-
Ishmael.
Yeah. Now, ironically, without getting into too much of the detail, the reference in the Quran about the sacrificing of the son does not even mention Ishmael. His name is never mentioned.
Aha.
Aha.
There's an extrapolation from the material.
Because you should know this.
Yeah. Now, you laughed earlier, little Damon. You're Jewish, aren't you? That the Jews went in a time machine. We have the historical data about Abraham trying to sacrifice Isaac through the direction of God, naming Isaac. Now, Islam comes what? That was 1500 BC or so.
So,
And
So
so some
2,200 years
2,200
later.
years later.
yeah, 2,200 years later, CNN corrects the record and says that the
No, that would
Quranic
be-
record
Yeah.
is accurate. And the name Ishmael
Yeah.
is not even mentioned in the Quran.
It's
because
deduced,
they
yeah.
can't. The Muslims they can't say that Isaac is the son of promise because they then can't change the directives that God gave the Jews in the
Right.
Well, they
in the
also
Hebrew
think
Bible.
that
Here is the point. Either, folks, the Hebrew Bible, which Jews and Christians follow, is accurate, where the son that was going to be sacrificed is Isaac, which moves the biblical story and God's story in one direction, or it was Ishmael, which moves it in a different direction. It can't be both. And this is part of the tension and the animosity that Muslims who change the narrative, change the record, distorted the historically verifiable record. When you, we can do this all day long.
there's archaeological
Yes.
proof of Abraham and Isaac
Yes.
and where they were and what they did, and what the Muslims talk about. There's no proof of.
And when
Except for
God
the
said,
damage.
take Isaac to Mount Moriah is underneath this, folks. Over here, Mike. Mount Moriah is underneath the dome of the rock. What do you think the rock is?
Hold on.
The rock is the rock upon which Isaac was placed by Abraham for the sacrifice. We were just touching this thing last week. This is now over Mount Moriah. Genesis 22 says Abraham, through God's direction, placed his son Isaac there, was going to, because he believed God would resurrect him. God intervened and provided a scapegoat. But in order to validate the lie that's taking place, Mike,
That's right.
the Hajj right now,
Right.
in order to validate this lie, when Islam, back to this thing, when Islam conquered Jerusalem and needed to establish an edifice to show the superiority, they built the Dome of the Rock. This is not a mosque. The mosque is next door to it. They built the Dome of the Rock. Dome of the Rock! The rock is the rock upon which Isaac was going to be sacrificed. Go back to the Hajj right now. These people are circling their Kaaba in absolute defiance of the story that we are just laying out. So, when the great analysts on national security, when they try to say, well, we can find peace and all that, you've got to go to the systemic issues of a theological difference that never can be abridged. Never, ever. You have to factor the theology into the politics of Islam, because there's no bifurcation between the theology of Islam and the political constructs of Islam. It's all monolithic, unlike Judaism and Christianity.
That's right.
Oy vey.
Oy vey, indeed.